Two clocks in my car. One's always right and one's always wrong.
Sweet little car parked around the corner.
Oh, well, they told me I couldn't park here.
Yeah.
I know.
And I got here and felt I could.
Yes.
Okay, kia ora tātou and good morning everyone and welcome to council meeting of Monday the 25th of September 2023. Welcome, I see some of our CCOs here ready to present to us, so welcome. A reminder in terms of health and safety, if the alarm sounds, we make our way out the back and across the road through the roadworks and assemble on the other side from this building and wait for instructions from staff. Just be aware that everyone needs to be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and the video will be publicly available on YouTube. Remind everyone just to turn their mobile phones up, and just a reminder to our presenters today when they come up to just make sure that the microphone button is on and green, and just use one microphone at a time, and they're very sensitive, so when you move if you move your head around when you're speaking, we often lose the audio. Okay, Shad, can you open for us with a karakia?
Tēnā koe e, tātou katoa, ko pētahi nei. Pekira I ngā mema o ngā poari, matua, o Iaropu nā mahara mai. Me kira, kia tātou I ngā kaimahi, I ngā āpia, tēnā koutou, tēnā. I just wanted to acknowledge our CCO boards here, and also members of the public, and our media colleagues, and our staff. So I'll just open with a short karakia, o te kia mita. I te atua nei rā mātai koetahi nei, ka tuku ngā reo whakamoemis, ngā reo whakawhetai ki a koe, tō mai rātou I ngā kaha ki o ki tēnā o wātou. Kai āwhina nei, hei manaaki nei a tātou ratu I ene nei. Tō rere te atua tēnei mātuna tēnei ki a koe, korore ki tōna tau. Amen.
Thanks, Shad. So we have no apologies, everyone's here. We have no one booked for the public forum. Any late items? No? No confidential business transferred into the open. Not aware of any order of business, but we'll take it as it comes. Not a change to the order of business. That brings us to the minutes of the council meeting held on the 4th of September. Any questions or corrections? Bill's moving, Stephen seconding. Everyone happy? True and correct record. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Declarations of conflicts of interest. None. No deputations, presentations or petitions. We've got no recommendations from other committees. That brings us to the business for today, and we start with the annual reports, well, draft and final annual reports for 2022-23 year from our CCOs. And first up, we have Bay Venues, I think it is. Simon and Shad, welcome.
Morning. Mighty yeah.
Very good article in the Weekend Sun, Simon, and thank you very much for the service that you have given chairing Priority One, which is a critical organisation for the Western Bay Plenty. Your second critical job.
Okay, that's Mighty yeah, Koto. Lovely to see everyone this morning. We've got a brief presentation just to pick up some of the highlights from the annual report, and happy to take any questions from there. Really just wanted to, I guess, probably celebrate a really successful year for Bay Venues. It's been great to see the rebound from COVID over the past 12 months. And that's certainly shown through in the numbers that we've presented. It's also been a year we've been able to reset the organisation in many ways as well, so it's been a busy year in that respect, and yeah, really exciting that we're well positioned moving forward. Wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Commission for your support. It's been really encouraging and great to be working with you to make sure the organisation is set well moving forward. Equally to Marty and the council team, we've built some really good, strong relationships there. There's always some little bits where we're still working on things, but overall, really appreciate the support that we get from council and council staff as we work our way through, the range of issues that we're dealing with. Just wanted to note that in terms of the audit side of things, that these are our unaudited financial statements. We have had the auditors come back to us and everything's got the green light, and that's being signed off and approved by our board at our board meeting tomorrow. So that's all on track. Let's move forward to the next slide, please. In terms of highlights, so lots of highlights during the year. As I said, probably one of the key ones is seeing visitation return into the venues after what had been a challenging few years with COVID. So yeah, over 2 million visitors into our facilities, including things like 240 odd events, 77 sports tournaments during the year. So a whole range of activity coming through there. Just wanted to highlight, and we've mentioned to you before that we've got a little motto that we're using at the moment about being community at heart and commercial in mind. And I shared this story that I'm going to share with you in a moment with Council's SLG group on Friday. And we've done a bit of work recently with a group around Muslim women. And because of their cultural beliefs, they don't tend to get to use our swimming facilities at all. It just becomes too hard when you've got mixed genders and things like that. So we've got a community ambassador who works out mainly in our community centres, but she came across this group, worked with Sima, who's been our emerging director on our board, and they've identified that there's an opportunity to use our swimming facilities at off-peak times and make it just available to Muslim women. So a lot of these women were able to come in. It's a relatively small group, but it was the first time that any of them had really been able to swim in our swimming facilities. So lots of examples like that where there are, that real community at heart pieces coming through and being able to utilise the facilities to benefit people. Financially, we're pretty well set up now, and certainly wanted to again thank Council for your support in ensuring that, subject to the LTP exercise, that we will be well set moving forward. We've also done a lot of work within the organisation in terms of getting the right team in place. So a new executive team at Bay Venues, and that's kind of flowing through the rest of the organisation. So we have that structure set up to support our strategy. So a lot of work has been happening in that space. And a lot of focus around our strategic delivery in terms of getting the numbers back through and building the capability within the business to be able to support the needs of the community moving forward. That includes things in the sustainability space, and there were some examples of that in the annual report. We're also making sure that our facilities are up to scratch. So we completed the Greerton upgrade work that had been going on, and Baywave was also closed for a couple of months while we did a whole lot of work there too. And that kind of activity will continue. If I can just skip forward on the slide. So in terms of some numbers, I won't dwell on this, but effectively we delivered slightly better than budget, which, and these numbers are all a significant improvement on the previous year, particularly the visitation, but also getting the revenue back to where it was. And we were 100K favourable to budget in terms of our expenditure, still a deficit, which obviously we're working our way through, but generally headed in the right direction. And skipping on to the next slide. Obviously, with the return of people back into the venues, that also comes with the challenge of the fact that we are at maximum capacity around a lot of our venues. So great to see people back, but that just puts pressure on in all sorts of ways. And look, there's no surprise in any of these challenges. These are things that I think everyone is well aware of. And in terms of the capacity issue, we are working closely with Council around the Memorial Park project, and that's getting some good traction at the moment, which will deliver more capacity moving forward. Obviously working closely with Council around the master plans, and the Bay Park, opportunities there in particular. But there will also be some short-term challenges there, particularly with Memorial Park, that we will lose some courts when the facilities come out while the new ones are being built. So in the short term, there will be a bit of pain before we get to those benefits coming through. Also wanted to highlight in terms of one of the challenges, and this is something that's probably been an emerging issue, and I'm sure council's seeing it in other areas as well. There's just some of the antisocial behaviour that we're experiencing within the venues, and some of the aggressive behaviour from people from time to time. And obviously it's a small percentage of people, but there is some significant risk that comes with that to our staff and our customers and our facilities. So we're working hard to try and mitigate that as best we can. In the resourcing space, while it has been a challenge, we've actually seen some really good improvements. And I wanted to thank, again, Council for the support around enabling us to move to living wage and supporting that financially. That's seen us move, and these numbers don't quite probably match the financial year, but over 12 months, we've moved from a 40% staff turnover to 25% staff turnover in the latest month's reports. So that's a huge shift for a relatively small organisation like ours to get that movement. And that living wage has been a big part of that. We've been focusing a lot on culture. Obviously, the market's improving slightly as well, but that's been a big shift, and we're really encouraged by that. The next slide is around governance, and Simon's going to speak to that.
Yep, thanks, Chad. I mean, I guess one of the key points I wanted to make here is that we've had no churn on the board, which has actually been great. So we've managed to keep the new board that was appointed a few years ago, and add Wayne, mana whenua representative, and Simon. Having Simon there as a young director has been an excellent program run by TCC, and we're looking forward to participating in that again as you roll that program out again. And reappointment of Nick Lowe and the reappointment of Gareth Wallace as the TCC representative for another year has been very useful. So good stability at the board table, which has enabled us to make some good decisions and move forward and provide the support to Chad and the team that is required. TCC team have engaged Governance 365 and for a review of the board later this year, and we participate in that over the next month. So looking forward to that process.
And then finally, looking ahead, we've got a lot of projects and a lot of things that we're working on at the moment. So the three key projects, trying to keep the team focused around making sure we're delivering the best customer experience for our customers. So having that really strong customer focus, and that's going to be a multi-year project to keep improving consistently. We're also, as I mentioned, working hard around looking at the venue capacity and working closely with council around those major projects, but also looking at how we can create potential space or time within our venues with other things as well. So whether that's turning things around more quickly or trying to find some of the smaller, less utilised spaces and trying to create opportunities for more activity there. And finally, just making sure that we've got the right spaces for our staff. So we've started the work on our office project at Bay Park, but also just looking to make sure that we are supporting our team across our facilities. Also doing a bit of work and continuing to invest in our systems and our people. So a lot of learning and development for our people, making sure we can grow them. I think that's helping in terms of retaining staff as well. And overall, though, I think just come back, Bay Park. So we know that there's a need to make sure that master plan is delivered. So working closely and had some really encouraging meetings with netball and with Speedway to keep that dialogue going and building those relationships. So that's, heading in the right direction. We're well positioned to take advantage of and to support opportunities as well. So I think the organisation is well set in that space. And so any of those opportunities that will benefit the city, we're up for exploring. We have had a few changes with some of their summer activity looking forward. So some of our regular events that would have come to Bay Park have instead decided to move to the Domain. So that will change the mix of events at Bay Park over summer, but still a number of concerts coming to us at Bay Park, but just a few changes in that space. And finally, just wanted to thank Simon and the board for their support, our staff who do a huge amount of work in the community on a daily basis, and also want to thank the community for their support of our facilities over the past 12 months, and happy to take any questions.
Ed, that's a much better year end than last year, but I mean, we always knew that COVID was going to create some problems if we lost our sound. Is that my imagination or?
Seems quiet.
Can you hear me? Yeah, that's better, that's better. Okay, any questions? Yep, Stephen.
Thanks, Simon and Chad, and yeah, you can certainly see a turnaround year, which is a really positive, and not only in terms of the performance for the year, but your plans for the future, I think, are very promising. My question relates to, you are experiencing increased operating costs, and we went through the process this year of the fees review, and you note in your report that notwithstanding that, we are still below the market rates. So given the need for investment going forward and your continuing operating costs, what's the thinking around the fees review and looking at the upside of your revenue? Is that a continuing process? What's the plan?
Great question. I think there's probably two parts to the answer of that. Firstly, in terms of any of our commercial activities, so catering and things like that, we do market price things. So we will continue to monitor that in terms of how the market is charging around that space. So that's an ongoing exercise that we do, and we try and keep pace with the market there. When it comes to our community facilities, obviously, we've been through that exercise, and those pricing increases for our general admission have just kicked in. For our user groups, they will commence from 1 January. So the next opportunity to look at that won't be for another 12 months. I think using the benchmark model is really key around that. So we'll continue to use that as the guideline moving forward.
Again, I'd just really like to reinforce that approach. I think that it's exactly on the money. It's really positive that we can pass on the living wage, and you can see the payback in terms of organisational development from that, but it does come at a cost. So it's a question of balancing the revenue against those costs, and the same for investment in the infrastructure assets. And we're at our peak demand and our capacity really right across the community. So yeah, the more that you can keep that kind of commercial focus on revenue and cost, managing costs down and revenues at the appropriate rate, the better. And I think the organisation's on a good pathway for that.
If I can add to that too, we'll continue to look for any other opportunities where we can make some revenue in different areas to offset those costs. So that's a continued focus, and certainly the board are encouraging us to do that.
Chad.
Kia ora, thank you. Thank you for all the work that you guys do. I think as a community, since through what I've been through over the last few years to see where we are today, I think is a testament, to the work that you guys have been doing in the background. I do like and when I think about our strategic framework, about the environment, about inclusivity, and about vibrancy, you deliver on all those three areas. And I particularly like the point that you made about reaching out into those parts of our community that may not necessarily engage with either with us or with you, but looking at those initiatives, I think are a great way that we embrace and make all parts of our community feel connected. Oh, sorry, just died. Although I do have a question, and from a sustainability point of view, thinking about the way we use, or the way you're using facilities and providing services to the community, do you do any measures around how you or measure how you're progressing from a sustainability perspective?
Yeah, we do, and we've been working with council around the Toitu certification. So we worked through that this year for the first time, and I think we're due to start that process again to see how it's been updated. So yeah, certainly from that perspective, we are looking to follow that through, and particularly that's in the carbon space to understand what we're doing, and then we'll be able to continue to look for opportunities, but always looking at projects like replacing lighting with more energy efficient LED lighting and things like that. So I think there was an example of that in the annual report.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge in particular in terms of the range of satisfaction that you've outlined in that report. And in terms of, say, in the previous years with COVID, etc., so the overall trend for that satisfaction level has that been quietly increasing, or is it plateaued, or what's happening in that space, Chad?
Probably without doing an analysis on that off the top of my head, I think we've been reasonably stable in terms of that, and it kind of moves up and down from time to time. It was certainly one of our concerns actually coming out of COVID, that as more people were coming back into our facilities, that maybe the satisfaction levels might drop, but they seem to have held up okay at the moment. We are seeing probably a trend slightly downwards in terms of the satisfaction with the facilities, again, given the age and the quality and the demand on them. So that's something that we're going to have to watch out for. Equally, we're trying to make sure we are investing back in the facilities in the right area. So I know, for example, our community centres and halls team have been doing quite a bit of work, and whether it's painting the place, or whether it's putting some new kitchen facilities in, just to make life easier for people. Things like we used to have heaters that were coin operated. I think most of those have been replaced now with timers and just more efficient and better technology coming through. So we'll continue to work on those things, but it will be a challenge over the coming years.
Well, and actually, that's a good segue into my next question in terms of that satisfaction with facilities. And whilst there's a global figure in the report, I presume you have the breakdown for each of those facilities?
Yeah, we should have that. Yeah.
Because that then, in terms of my final question, there's 8.74 million in terms of renewal funding. And I presume, looking ahead, subject to LTPs and that there will be that that sort of level going forward in addressing some of those facility issues.
Absolutely. We've spent a lot of time analysing that and working with the council team to make sure the right funding levels are put into the budgets moving forward. I think sometimes there's a feeling that you build a new facility and then it'll be fine for the next however long, but you do have to keep investing in those things. We're looking to be smart with that though, so that we're not spending money in the wrong areas, but being cost effective in terms of what we do. But yeah, there is certainly an uplift projected through the draft LTP to make sure that we look after those facilities moving forward.
The comment, Chair, that's an issue we've faced over a range of the council activities in terms of making sure that that appropriate level of maintenance and renewal does occur and continues to occur.
So can I congratulate you again on a great year? And just looking through your highlights, I mean, I have to say, you look at a picture like, was squash? Is it squash? Yeah. I mean, it's just fantastic, and just promotes this area so well. Ames, of course, was a huge success again, with minimal disruption. Although I was a bit preoccupied, but I didn't get a lot of emails complaining about. So it's obviously been managed well with so many, 22,000 extra people coming into town. So it's been a really good year. I guess I've been keeping an eye on politics, funnily enough, just checking out the school lunches, because that's quite a considerable revenue stream for you, and it's good to see that everyone's supporting maintaining them. You did lose a couple during the year. Are you looking to expand that, or are you content with where you are?
The schools that we lost were Whakatane based, so that was a case of those communities wanting to provision for that themselves, which we're very comfortable with that. It's meant that we've kind of pulled the program back and focused it around Tauranga. So I think there's 11 schools that we service that are all within Tauranga Moana. That program is based on the decile system, so it depends on whether the government were prepared to extend that in any way. At the moment, we've got, I think, 100% of that or close to it within Tauranga. We are looking at how we might be able to leverage that team to be able to, potentially service other markets. So that's something that we're thinking about. But if there were opportunities in that space in the educational area, we'd certainly be keen to explore them and able to do that.
And the other question I had for you was on one of your slides you put up there. It's not just the state of our venues; it's the range of our venues. So, I know that you are very conscious of straitened circumstances with the LTP, but looking forward, do you think there's some areas that we're really missing?
I think it's probably just around trying to focus on the core portfolio and making sure the network gets up to speed, and that's going to take us some time to do. We know we're short on water space, and that's where Memorial, the aquatic facility there, will address those concerns. I think, though, it's probably about saying, well, the plan that we've got for the next 10 years is fine, but how do we cater for the next 30 years? That's really where the challenge is going to be as the growth continues to come, and making sure that the facilities that we do build have some flexibility and adaptability within them so that we can respond to changing trends in the leisure and recreation space.
All right, nothing more. Thank you very much. Good year.
Thank you.
Look forward to an even better one next year with a good summer.
Absolutely.
Okay, art gallery. Sonia and Rosemary, thank you. Right, Anna.
Morena, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and talk to you about our annual report. We're really keen to share our exciting new initiatives that we've run, and also to talk a little bit about the challenges we've faced this year, particularly with the impact of COVID. There's been a number of changes from a governance perspective. Stephen Farrant, our Deputy Chair, stepped down, and Wayne Werder stepped up into that role. We have two new members of the board, that is Rachel Scott and Sylvia Willison, who joined the board as Mana Whenua representative. It's fantastic to have such a great board to work with. So from a board perspective, we're feeling really confident about our ability to meet the challenges going forward, but there are a number of headwinds in front of us. We did have real challenges at the beginning of the year around COVID and its impact on our revenue, both in the education space, in the venue hire space, and in sponsorships and donors. And we've really had to work very hard during the year to make up as much as we could of that. In particular, in the education space, I'm really proud of what the team presented. They worked really hard to bring more and more schools through to catch up on what was lost during that COVID time. I'll hand over to Sonia to talk about the details around that.
Kia ora, and thank you, Rosemary. Kia ora tātou, everybody. For this report, I actually joined the Art Gallery in the last quarter of the financial year, and I actually just wish to acknowledge the good work of Stephen Cleland, my predecessor, who took us through some very, as Rosemary has mentioned, challenging times. And indeed, COVID was still very much present towards the end of, at the beginning of this financial year. Our vision is around creating lifelong connections with art, and you will have seen the figures and engagement with our programs. Next slide, please. And I'm absolutely delighted that we can report. Is it wanting to change over? I'm absolutely delighted that I can report that we had over 50,000 people engaged with the Tauranga Art Gallery exhibition experience here and around New Zealand. And I thought I'd actually start by sharing a story about Aisha Green. She's an artist who won the Rydell Art Prize. The Rydell Art Prize is the most significant cash prize for a painter in Aotearoa, and it's presented by the Tauranga Art Gallery and the Seeds Trust. Aisha was an early career artist when she won it, and the prize gave her the opportunity to take 6 months off and develop a significant body of work, which we exhibited here at the Tauranga Art Gallery. The Tauranga Art Gallery is obviously part of an ecosystem of galleries around New Zealand and indeed internationally too. And Aisha's body of work, it enabled her to step up significantly, and a number of those paintings sold into collections at the Christchurch Art Gallery and also the Auckland Art Gallery. But what came from that show, and it was my absolute pleasure to attend recently, is it's now at City Gallery in Wellington, Folk Nationalism, being toured by the Tauranga Art Gallery in partnership with Seeds Trust. And it's just, I guess, one way that we can demonstrate that Tauranga Art Gallery contributes to a wider discourse and within our country as well. Yesterday, I attended the AGM for our Friends of Tauranga Art Gallery, and it was the 26th year since the Friends were established. Just thinking about building lifelong connections with art. Bill, you'll probably remember when that first happened. And I met a new member of the Friends. She only moved here 3 years ago, and she moved not knowing very many people in Tauranga. She's joined our Friends and made some really good friends. And it was wonderful because what she shared with me was one of our exhibitions, which is around weaving, and she has a Scottish heritage. This exhibition's 2 Māori weavers, and she spoke about, for her, it was into her ancestry and history around tartan and textiles, and she's attended all the talks associated with that. We often talk in the Tauranga Art Gallery about how well our education programs are going, and they are. I just wanted to provide a couple of other examples of how people engage with our wider programs that we present. Can we move on to the next slide, please? We've had, as you can see on our slide, we've had great engagement through our schools programs, and in particular, an area that we've increased in is our secondary schools. And I just wanted to share a story for a group that came from Rotorua Girls High. We have schools that come from outside of the Bay of Plenty region to our gallery, and they attended not only a program at the Tauranga Art Gallery, but we organised for them to visit Kuwal Gallery, which is emerging Māori artists. And the teacher wrote back, because they always provide feedback at the end of a visit, to say that it was an excellent experience for her students because they were able to see creative pathways in moving throughout the creative industries and what you can achieve when you're also working at the top level with some of our artists that we were showing as well. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we have engagement nationally, but we also have visitors attending from Western Bay and Tauranga City. Our visitor satisfaction was at 76%, although we seem to have something funny going on with the numbers on the screen. And just to say a big thank you to my team for the excellent experiences that they're producing. Next slide, please. Just looking at the residents there, we've had an increased number again with our overseas visitors, and that is because of the borders are now open, and we're really looking forward to a summer this year, welcoming more domestic and international visitors to our pop-up space on Devonport Road. If we could just move on to the next slide. So our financials, again, these are unaudited. Just to mention, and we finished the year in a deficit of 200,000. This is, as Rosemary mentioned, reflective of the impact of COVID on revenue generation. We couldn't generate any revenue through hosting events. And it also meant for our sponsors and our donors, we were not as attractive proposition during that time as well, as both the private and public sectors have each experienced supply chain issues and pressures, and increased costs and service and labour costs as well impacted our bottom line this year. And then just looking forward to the upcoming year, we're going to be closing our main building on the 1st of October, and as Masonic Park is developed. And this is really exciting for the gallery as we move into this next phase as a Te Manawa o Te Papa partner. During the coming months, as the main building is closed and we're operating out of our pop-up space on Devonport Road, our education programs are still at the same level as what they were in our main building. We're able to deliver on that. But what it does mean for my team is that for the first time in 16 years, we're actually able to take a period of review of our programs, especially with a focus on the visitor experience. So then when we reopen in our main building later on next year, we're really looking forward to servicing future generations in Tauranga Moana through exceptional art experiences. Kia ora.
Finish. Right. Okay. Questions? Bill.
Thanks, Sonia and Rosemary, and just acknowledging some of those challenges you've had in the last year, but certainly looking forward though, and you noted, Sonia, in terms of your priorities, and one of them was the development of the sustainable business model. I was just interested in what you mean or define as that, and then I have a further question in terms of potential for charging. So if you can comment on the sustainable business model first.
As you know, the business model for an art gallery in New Zealand has a range of funding sources, and in particular to acknowledge the significant operational funding that we receive from Tauranga City Council in particular. We then work really closely with community trusts, donors and corporate sponsors. And since my appointment, I have appointed a full business team, and so we're very focused on revenue generation. Looking forward to reopening in the main building, it creates some additional opportunities for revenue generation that we have planned. We will be the venue for venue hire in the city centre. And there are other opportunities around this fantastic facility that we have for increasing our income as well.
So just following on from that, and I note in the report, it's our page 57, in terms of the visitor surveys, and 8% overseas and 18% from the rest of New Zealand, putting aside Western Bay and the city. Has there been, or is there any thinking, and going back to your commentary around the opportunities when the gallery reopens back on its current site, in terms of the potential for charging whatever for those overseas and other New Zealand visitors to the gallery? Because I know when go overseas or other parts of New Zealand, those opportunities seem to always present themselves. Given the challenges of income and costs and that, just interested in your thinking in that space.
Absolutely. I think it is expected when you are travelling, as you say, that you are making a contribution to when you're visiting facilities. It's a piece of work that we will be undertaking. My new business development and experience manager will be looking into that, yes.
So I just wanted to talk to you. So you mentioned the difficulties of getting sponsorship. When you look at what you budgeted for and what you actually got in sponsorship, I mean, obviously it's been an almost disastrous year from that perspective. What is your feeling about the coming year? Because you budgeted about 82,000 from sponsorship and really only achieved just over 6,000.
As we're all aware, there are challenges right now in securing corporate sponsorship, and as in the current economic environment. However, I have been in Tauranga for 10 years. I have some excellent relationships in the corporate sector, and we are already underway with corporate partnerships. And having built up our business team as well, I look forward to improving in that space over the coming 12 months.
Well, that's good to hear, because it has been a successful line of financial assistance, hasn't it, in the past? 22, there was 75,000 or 95,000.
Just to add to that, Anne, although the sponsorships have been down, we have been very successful in gaining, it's the way we define sponsorships to an extent. So we have been successful in gaining other revenue. It's just perhaps not defined in the way that you might think. But if you look at overall non-government grant sponsorship and donations, they're much higher than as recorded in sponsorships.
Yeah, so that sort of brings me to my I guess the overall question is, when you look at your accounts, your funding and financing is changing quite dramatically, because that revenue shape is changing, but also your expenditure is changing when you look at what you budgeted for your event and exhibition expenses. So there's quite a change in there. Is that, so how do you explain that? Is that a different way that you're operating, or I just couldn't find any reference to it, because they're quite considerable movements in your accounts, A, from your budget, and B, from what you've achieved.
As I mentioned, there have been increased costs in the delivery of our exhibitions, but we also, during the course of the year, changed how we structured our payment system. Previously, our project partners, whether that be artists or other galleries, were invoiced at the conclusion. That's now phased, those payments, and so that's been reflected in the costs that you'll see, because we've had to front foot that in that financial year.
Right. So when I look at, say, event and exhibition expenses. So for exhibition contractors, you'd budgeted 1750, but actually it came out at 20 and a half. So that's the change in the way that you're doing it, is it?
What that reflects is some specialist expertise that was required beyond the expertise of the team.
Quite interesting to see your next budget, to see how it's shaped. Shad.
Just to follow on from that, I assume, I mean, when you came on, it's just transition, so budget was set. You're currently operating in a different way, and so trying to align that, well, in some ways doesn't necessarily align. I assume that's one of the reasons.
Correct.
Phil, and then Stephen.
Further question, Chair, and it relates to the non-financial performance targets and measures. There are a large, I think we must be over 20. We had a discussion with Tourism Bay of Plenty some time ago. So there's been a rationalisation of those measures and targets, I think down to about 10 or 12, thereabouts. I'm just wondering whether there's any opportunity to do something similar and whether we actually need and what value having the 20 odd actually brings to the table. So I'd just be interested in your comment on that.
I think a more focused set of targets would be of benefit for the team and I to work towards. Yeah.
So yes, please, on both sides. Yes. Okay, that's something that our team can certainly help you with, because I think I see the tourism people sitting there at the back. It makes a difference. Certainly makes a difference, and we don't want an onerous. Seems a very onerous reporting system. Yep, Stephen.
I think I was struggling a little bit with the accounts as was the chair. And I think part of that is to do with, you've got a situation where your revenue is not as good as you hoped, your expenses are higher than you expected. So then you turn to notes to get an understanding of that. But the key one, note 13 wasn't in the report that explained the variances. Now I know there are unaudited accounts, but it does make it difficult to then understand kind of what the causes were, and then obviously prompt the questions around what you're doing to address those issues. So that's, I think, some of the part of the problem when we're reviewing the annual report. I mean, I think the fundamental question is getting the balance right between revenues and expenses. And Bill touched on the opportunity for looking at charging. Many museums or art galleries you go to, there is a fee even to the locals for those special events. So the ability to capture both special event kind of revenue. I note that the patronage from the Western Bay is very high, but no contribution is coming from that district. So should they be contributing, or should they Western Bay residents be paying a fee, and how you go about that? Some good questions for the new commercial team to be exploring, and I think you're on the money to have that expertise on board, and this year provides an opportunity to really think that through. Thank you.
Western Bay of Plenty do put in 40,000. Yeah. Based on their attendance, maybe we need to be talking to them about upping that. Yeah. Together. Yes. So your notes go to 12. We didn't get a note 13, which might have explained a bit of that. The changes to your revenue stream.
Apologies, I will look into that. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much. Look forward to a good year. even though it might be quite disruptive. It'll be exciting. Tourism Bay of Plenty. Oscar and Russell. Morena, welcome.
Morena tātou, morena everybody. Right. Well, firstly, just want to repeat and acknowledge some of the comments that Chad mentioned. Want to acknowledge the support that we're getting from the Commission, from Council, from Marty and his exec team, and also inside the organisation. There's a lot of cross programs that we're now hitting our stride with, and really want to acknowledge everyone's efforts in that space. I think you've heard me use the phrase before. Part of my sort of goal since I've been in this seat has been to try to find our lanes and how we can get as many people on board at the same time and work together and make sure that we're not crossing lanes and getting in anyone's way. So the other realisation I've had is taking a lead from Chad is I've got twice the many number of PowerPoint slides that I need. So I'm going to move through quite quickly, if that's okay. So if you can try to keep up with me, that would be cool. So we can move to the next one. So I suppose just to reiterate, since being in the role and with the establishment of the great board that we've got, I think we've really hit our straps and we've sort of made a subtle sort of change to our purpose in terms of leading the prosperity of our people in place through tourism. Before, we were trying to work out where we fit, but we're pretty confident about what role we have to lead and to work with people in terms of leading that process. So that's just a minor change there. Next slide, please. On the similar theme that was just mentioned, we are very thankful for your rationalisation of our KPIs. As anyone knows, KPIs at the top level are just the ones at the top. There's a whole stream of work that happens underneath. So being able to accurately report on top 10 is useful, which I'll do now. So if we could shift to those. Thank you. Right, so very quickly, out of the 10, we probably got a score about 8.5, and I'll go into those in detail. So if we can go to the next slide. So these next three slides are where we have nailed things. So in terms of our economic well-being, our cultural well-being, and our organisation well-being, we've achieved those targets. And again, I'll leave the reading up to the report. Next slide, thanks. In terms of our cycle proposition, and that's a juggling act constantly between the boundaries of TCC, Western Bay, and not so relevant in this report, but this year we've also included one or two aspects from Whakatane to have a coastal offering, but you will like the size of the font that says Tauranga on the brochure. We've also achieved quite a bit of our capability building, and we're exceeding our business events targets, which is great, and I'll talk to that in a second, a little bit later. Next slide, thanks. During this time, we've also managed to keep up with all our digital campaigns and programs, and it's been a juggling act. So over the period of the report, COVID in, COVID out, things to do, things not to do. So a lot of it was around timing. So there's no use advertising when no one can arrive. So it was very much a big juggling act that we pulled off there. And we've been continuing with our Green Room or Te Ruma Kākariki program, also working with Bay Venues on some of that environmental questions as well. So whilst there's other programs, we've also been supporting some of those programs as well. Next slide, thanks. 1.5 pass mark is on the social well-being, this general perception of tourism and the impact of it in a positive sense. We've set targets at a 70% level. Unfortunately, we achieved it on the Western Bay side of that ledger. We came a little bit under on the TCC side of that ledger. But we're going to keep driving on that. And I think, just respectfully, there's a whole bunch of measures and impacts that affect that mark, but at 70%. At 64%, we're not far off it. The other one was Flavours of Plenty, which, in fairness, we probably just set the mark too high, to be honest. We set a target of 80% only in its second year, but we didn't account for the fact in our first year of Flavours, over 4 days, that was the time when events couldn't be run with 100 people or more. We got into the second year, we branched it to 10 days, and we could take on a lot bigger events, but the ratio of metrics of stepping from one to the other made our final number come under what we set. But effectively, and I'll talk about that shortly, we overachieved in Flavours. Next slide, thanks. I'm not going to talk too much to these. These are sort of taken snapshots out of the annual report. But our domestic and event marketing and our Flavours of Plenty program has been a real good stalwart for us during that time of COVID. So I think you can be quite proud of the efforts that were made. Whilst many were just sort of working out what they would do during COVID, we came up with some pretty innovative things that have managed to sort of platform us and give us some good sort of stability going forward. Next slide, thanks. The other big one, obviously with the opening of borders and trade, is the return of the international visitor. So in a very quick snapshot, global tourism for New Zealand is back to about 60% of what it was previously. There's still a few airlines that haven't arrived. There's still a little bit of hesitancy of people. Elections always make behaviours change. So one of the behaviour changes only a month ago was the dropping of the COVID restrictions. So if you weren't aware, New Zealand was still one of the only countries that made people go into COVID isolation on arrival up to only a month ago. So finally, that's been knocked out, and we can play with the big boys and girls again. So that's happened, and things are slowly but surely building up, and the Chinese market is coming back, but in no way similar to how it came back, how it was previously. On the cultural proposition, we've been doing some really innovative stuff there. I suppose at the top of the page is thinking about how do we have a different cultural proposition in the coastal bay to other regions, and we've been working quite heavily in that. And a lot of it is around our storytelling and our bespoke nature of smaller activities versus larger attractions. Next slide, thanks. Very quickly, we've been doing a lot of capability building and support, which was the theme of what good businesses do with operators during the period of COVID. So we've been continuing to run those programs, and I've touched on the cycle trail booklets and so forth. Next slide, thanks. When it comes to flavours, just in the second year, so again, some really great achievements there. We went from 20-something events to 34. We went from 4 days to 10 days. We went from nominal sort of revenue of just over 200,000 to this year, just under 500,000. So that's 500,000 of revenue to Tauranga and Coastal Bay of Plenty horticultural provenance operators that was not there previously. So it's not bad. And for our efforts, not that you get up in the morning and you want that, but for our efforts, we've been nominated a finalist in New Zealand Event Awards, both in the lifestyle and the local government event category. Next slide, thanks. Oh, that was just for Chad, really, this one. But this is, but yeah, that example was, we've just been busy out and about rebuilding operators and networks and so forth. For cruise season, just one final thing, then I'll talk about our finances. In terms of the cruise season that's just gone, we did extremely well. So long story short, we were targeting around 105 scheduled arrivals. We actually got 91. As you can remember, there was some inclement weather. We didn't really have a summer. That summer also impacted tidal and water, weather impacts. But ultimately, we managed to pull off a very good cruise season, very good partnerships with the port and other operators. We're looking at repeating that. We've actually got an update to this season, similar to what we did last season at the cargo shed next week. So that's when we bring ourselves, the port, New Zealand Cruise Association, all our operators, all interested parties together, and we sort of update as to what they can expect for the season coming up. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes beneath that to prepare for that. And also as a reminder, we've got, the last time we went out ahead of the cruise season, 76% of our residents support cruise and the notion of cruise. But we're not resting on our laurels, and we're going to work on a lot wider, broader destination cruise value proposition plan that will be partnering with the likes of Priority One and others to deliver. Next slide, thanks. Happy to answer questions afterwards, which I'm only 3 slides away from. But in terms of our finances, I think there's one thing to highlight, which I know is potentially, this is me trying to cut off a question. But I know that you've been quite heavy on us around sort of reducing our cash reserves in terms of us sort of sitting pretty up on a hill somewhere. So we've heard you, And this year is the movement from that. I suppose the two main things is the government during the period of COVID enabled regions to be supported by various programs and funds. One was the Regional Events Fund, called REF, or referred to as REF, and the other one was Strategic Tourism Asset Protection Program, which is too long, but it's called STAP. And both those programs have come to the end of their funding periods, and you can see that our cash reserves over the next 3 years are getting back to BAU. Not that I'm accepting that what BAU is at the moment, but that's the sort of, we're pulling that down. So you can see that we've heard your call on reducing our cash reserves, and happy to answer more questions on that should you raise them. Next slide, thanks. So just very briefly, it's been a really great year. It's allowed us to build confidence in some other areas. And as I mentioned, those partnerships with council, we built our confidence there, I think, as well. So we've got some really good programs going on and around some brand work for the destination, playing our role in part of the smart city development with digital kiosks and wayfinding and so forth, and also evolving our proposition around ocean and beaches to land in the wellness proposition, and something that's quite exciting. So we're looking forward to that. And probably we can just move through the next two slides and go straight to the last one, so I can. Yep. And so yes, thank you, and happy to take any questions. Come on.
Thanks. It's a great photo. It's a great picture.
Great photo, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks very much. Yes, and so that's continuing the theme of sort of recovering activities post-COVID. Just picking up on your social well-being and that percentage of residents who agree tourism has a positive impact. It's going to be quite important, particularly around the cruise ships. I just wondered, you said there are a lot of factors. What do you think are the factors, or what are you seeing underneath that simple question that's affecting that?
I think there's a couple of things. Respectfully, it's possibly the way that particular question is also included in general questions. I'm not sure if that's being asked at the same time as other questions relating to council are being asked, as an example. But I also think that there wouldn't be in terms of how do we improve that or focus on that. I think we're doing a really good job at the moment communicating with residents in terms of what's good for residents is good for visitors. What we would be happy to participate in is how we could potentially relook at how that question's posed, because that question is a direct response from a broader questionnaire that is put out to council by council. So I'm quite happy to sort of maybe have a look into that question to give it a little bit more scope, and so that we really do get that understanding. Because as an example, the 76% response on perception of cruise that we got was that specificity was because we had to go out and independently do that. So part of the general view of tourism respectfully might be washed in other views as well, is what I'm saying.
It's just, it would be good for you to do that, because especially seeing all the work that you've done around that environmental sustainability, your green room, because often people look at tourists as spoiling the environment. Lots of people, that's the general view. And the work that you've been doing is completely contrary to that. So it would be quite good to try and get a better question or a better understanding, and B, that might tell you.
Point noted. I'll take that conversation back and we'll work out how we might be able to do that. Yeah.
Did you want to make any comments before I open it all up?
No. I think Oscar handled all that really well. I guess from a governance point of view, in the presentation, we haven't got a slide like Bay Venues did, but for us, we've got our two new trustees on board, and Janine Tulloch and Peter Blakeway. We're meeting with a potential mana whenua candidate on Friday after we have an opening or blessing for the eyesight. which will be a nice step forward. And we've also taken on board to be a host board for the Emerging Director Award, which is announced on Thursday night. Yeah.
Good, thank you. Bill.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge and congratulate you in terms of how you have, in one page, outlined the progress against KPIs. Just really easy to understand. I think it's a very good model. So just wanted to acknowledge that. And I also like, if I use the economic well-being as an example, just that comparison with the previous years or years. It just helps to give an understanding, the trends and where things are heading. So well done to the team on that. I would, and picking up the chair's comments, delving down into that social well-being, I think is absolutely critical, because part of that from my perspective is in terms of what the appropriate question is, but putting that aside as to what is key in maintaining and growing that, or this community's appreciation of the value and the positive impact of tourism.
Yeah,
really support that. And my last matter is a comment. It's only anecdotal, but certainly the, for want of a better word, the refocusing and direction of Tourism Bay of Plenty, I have had some very good commentary from some operators in terms of what's happened in the last year or so. So I just wanted to pass that on. Not scientific, but it's just what you pick up as you're out and about in the city.
Good, Bill, thank you.
Yeah, I'd echo that sentiment. What I particularly like is the focus on driving total visitor spend up. That's core business. And you're very focused on that whilst sustaining the social license. And I think those are the two issues that kind of position themselves one against the other. I suspect that part of that kind of social license is mitigated by concern around pressure and growth that is fundamental to this city. So some storytelling about how important tourism is to our regional economy and what it means for business and community and jobs and all of those sorts of things. Without having the detail, I suspect that that's what's required to help build that confidence in the tourism sector, then offset by what you're doing around tourism sustainability. It kind of addresses both sides of that ledger. But I do really like the refocus back to core business. And I think having so many KPIs in the past may well have been a distraction. And you can see it in the numbers coming through. To be 17% up in total visitor spend compared with pre-COVID, it's a pretty remarkable kind of increase. So keep it up. More of that will be very welcome.
Thank you. Just want to support the comments made by commissioners and not necessarily go over that again. But last night I had a quick look on. Now I don't know how accurate the information is from Infometrics about comparing, Tauranga City to other tourism centres like Rotorua and Queenstown, and it seems we have bounced back quite considerably when you compare ourselves against others, and I'm just looking at it now. So thinking about from a GDP perspective, in 22 we don't have the 23 figures, but in 22 we're sitting at 8.8% tourism contribution to Tauranga's GDP. And pre-COVID we were sitting around 10. Best year was in 2015 at 18%. And then when I look across at Queenstown, they're sitting at just under 14 for 22. So comparable, thinking through how we compare and how we track against others. I think kind of gives us a better understanding, how we're progressing. So I suppose I just kind of wanted to make those points as well. Some really good data and information there when comparing ourselves against others.
Just to make a comment on there, with one of the things with the change in government, likely, there's already a group of us that are having quite stern conversations with a revised MBS and Stats New Zealand focus, because we want to ensure that there's quite robust regional statistics going on in the regions. There's, at present we are pushing quite heavily, but we want to make sure that there's some rigor in the cruise sector statistics, as an example, with Stats New Zealand. So we want to make sure that those continue from a time series. It's very important. And again, if cruise was a country of inbound coming into New Zealand, it would be actually at the moment number 2 in total cruise passengers. So the Australia used to be China. They're way down number 6 at the moment. Cruise would actually be number 2, followed by the US market. Yep.
Without being political, there will definitely be a change of government because we'll have a coalition government rather than a one-party government. Just to keep it on the record. Okay, anything else? No, look, great year. Well done. Keep it up. Really good to see that emerging director. Yeah, that's a really good contribution to the growth of governance. And good that you're getting mana whenua. It was a shame to lose Charlie, but I certainly understand he does a good job down in Wellington. Okay,
Bye.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Kia ora.
Thank you. Right, do we have anyone presenting on Bowplace? Mr. Chief Executive, are you going to say anything?
No, I don't intend to say anything. So.
Okay, there's quite a big report there. Yeah. Local government funding or agency, anyone presenting on that? Paul?
Just to mention, so the majority of performance measures met, a drop in operating profit largely due to forward funding. That's really a business as usual type report from LGFA. Just under 4 billion of lending for the year, so good result.
It is. It's a really good report. I get the feeling that a lot of our residents don't understand this. Just some of the wacky sort of comments that have been made. So we might think about doing a bit of an explanation on how this works, because it's certainly, this organisation now certainly makes, and when you look at I can't find it quickly, but that page that shows the lending rates or the borrowing rates certainly makes a huge difference for local government, and the scale that it gives enables that, of course.
We can certainly bring that back to a future strategy, finance and risk, including the effectively the interest rate savings that have occurred over the time that's been in operation.
Yep, that would be good. Okay. Hang on. Yep. Right. Let's go back. Page 32. So that's the recommendations that we receive all of those reports from the council controlled. Well, first of all, receive the overall report, and then Bay Venues, Tauranga Art Gallery, Tourism Bay of Plenty Local Authority Shared Services Limited, and Local Government Funding Agency. So moved by Bill and seconded by Shad. Any further comments? I think it is good to see that all of them are doing better than expected. But I would like to understand the art galleries change the way that they're changing their funding model, and the funding of their exhibition seems to have dramatically changed. Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Item number 2, Historic Village Complex. Barbara. There's a little bit of a lesson for us here, is there?
Yes, yes, there is. Thank you. We're playing a bit of a team game here. I'm sure you all know Blair, but first time here. It is a bit different sitting here too. Yes. So I'll start, and Blair's obviously here to sell a passion and answer any questions. So C2, the building that we know as C2 is an extremely important building, both in its own right, but also in supporting the wider operations of the village. So as you know, we've got a lot of buildings at the village that need upgrading, and it links back to that comment I think Bill made earlier in the day and has made several times, that we have gone a very long time without repairing and maintaining some of these buildings. So in the program, we had what was considered a reasonably comprehensive upgrade to the C2 building, which include upgrading kitchens and lifts and toilets. And while the team probably did everything that, well, they did do everything that was right, they engaged in invasive assessment of the building, but it was only when the lining was pulled off the building they actually understood that that the project's changed. It's no longer a significant upgrade. It's now a structural upgrade, along with the upgrade that we want to actually for the operations of the building, which leads us coming here to ask for some more money so that we can undertake those repairs that, as I said at the beginning, is quite an integral building for the operations of the village. So in saying that, we're very mindful that we can't keep, I guess, adding to the ratepayer input into the village. So what we're suggesting is that we use the uncommitted funds this year and attribute that to the upgrade of this building, and then seek some unbudgeted expenditure that will be attributed to the next year, to the next financial year, but also take a step back and actually understand and take some more time to look at all of the buildings in the village to see how we can make that balance sheet better, whether that's actually earn more money so that we can still upgrade the current buildings or make some tough decisions about some other buildings. So we undertake to do that over the next little while. Blair has got a mountain of data, so I'm sure when we pull all of that data together that it won't actually take that long to actually undertake a review of the buildings at the village and the possibility of earning some more revenue. Also, if you are of a mind to adopt unbudgeted expenditure, we need to direct appoint the current contractor because of the change in scope of the budget. We need to have a direct appointment. It just makes sense that the current builder carries on with that work, and we don't look to go out and change builders potentially. There's two ways that we can ensure the prices, we can keep control of the price. A lot of the work will be by schedule, so there are scheduled rates that we can ensure that we're spending the money wisely, but the things that aren't budgeted, we will have a QS involved in the project to ensure that we are, that is the right amount of money to be spent. So happy to answer any questions, and I've got Blair here if you've got any questions for him.
Okay, well, I think for me, I think we need to bring the recommendation, which is on page 4316C, into the recommendations, which notes that there is a CapEx budget of 8.2 million in the long-term plan, in the proposed long-term plan. And recommends a full business case be prepared and presented. So I think if we bring that up into the recommendations, and that formalises that.
Okay. Yep.
And I think that Blair, first of all, Blair, you do a great job down there. And we do from time to time get complaints about trying to make it operate in a financially sustainable way, but at the end, that's how it's got to operate. Otherwise, we get buildings that are not fit for purpose being used by people. So I think in that business case, we should be pretty clear that if there are buildings that are not fit for purpose, that we may well have to close them rather than let community groups use unsafe buildings at a peppercorn rental. And I just continue to be amazed how successive councils have allowed some of those buildings to be used by good, kind-hearted, passionate members of our community in buildings that are not fit for purpose because it's a peppercorn rental. And I made the comment the other day, peppercorn rentals don't pay for building upgrades. That's the problem. So we might have to be tougher about what buildings we actually allow to be used if we can't afford to maintain them properly and safely, so that people are carrying out hugely important community services in areas that support them. We hear a lot about people living in warm, dry homes. Well, it is just as important that when they are working, that they are in safe environments. So that's my little rant for the day. Any questions for Barbara and Bill?
I mean, just following on as a comment, Chair, in terms of what you've outlined, as part of that business case, I'm assuming, and just wanting clarification on that assumption, that that business case will undertake the detailed assessment of all the relevant buildings, which may include quite invasive investigations, because I think it'd be fair to say, whether it's us or some future council, we don't want a surprise of this quantum. So I just wanted some commentary around the nature of that investigation.
Yep. Yes, we've got, I agree, we don't want a surprise, another surprise or bigger surprise, and I think an assessment will be undertaken on the buildings that we need to undertake an assessment of. By that I mean there are some buildings that are quite exposed and quite open now, and we won't, we'll be able to make some really good judgment on those, and there are other buildings that we would have to do the invasive investigation on. Bearing in mind, we did that on this one as well. But yes, certainly.
And just a further comment, and it's been touched upon in terms of, and we're going out as part of the LTP in terms of fees and charges and appropriate income for facilities such as this. What I think will be important, though, is actually telling the story. If we approve the recommendations, then, in my view, advice to the village occupants with a story around what's happening, because I suspect there will be expectations, given what's already in LTP for upgrading of facilities and that type of thing. So I think we need to make it clear so there's no myths develop that this is what's happened, this is what's occurring, this is the impact in terms of any other immediate investment in the village because of needing to address this particular situation.
Absolutely. We've talked about a process where we engage with the village, which Nalita and Blair will lead, to ensure that they understand the story, as you say. But also the way that we've undertaken the fees and charges this year will be the first year that we've been able to actually tangibly support Blair in charging those rates, because it's in the fees and charges manual. It'll be signed off. It'll be what it is. And it's not an expectation that we can negotiate that. So I think the process we're doing will certainly help Blair and support Blair actually achieving those revenue targets.
Look, I'm happy to move A, B, C. So receive the report, approve option 1 with that additional capital budget of 3.5 million, really, isn't it, to complete that upgrade to Complex 2. That is a vitally important complex and one which will return good revenue to the village. Transfer that 1.4 million of uncommitted projects and approve the unbudgeted expenditure of 2 million, and approve the direct appointment of Alaska Construction Interiors to complete with the proviso you have got a QS, just to make sure. And then bringing up 16C. Which notes that CapEx budget of 8.2 million in the 24 to 34 LTP and OpEx of 2.4 million, and a full business case be prepared and presented. All right, thank you. So that's been moved and seconded. Any other comments, questions? Yeah, Stephen.
You've largely answered my questions, and particularly the importance of the QS, because in any variation of contract is always an opportunity. I guess the fundamental question, are we happy that we've accounted for everything that needs to be done for this project?
We can see right through the building now. We can see pretty much everything that there is to see about this. We've had a design team, the engineers have crawled over it. We've had the QS hammering the contractors. We know everything there is to know about this building.
Well done, that's the assurance that I was looking for.
Right, okay, so put the motion then. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Water management plan. I see Peter at the back there.
Tata, I don't know what it is about us reporting on drought management and heavy rain events coming in simultaneously, but it does seem to happen every time, actually.
It does.
Yes. Peter, I'll hand over to you.
Morena Tata. I guess, so this paper is really just serves as an update. We did bring a paper to Council November last year. At that stage, we had commissioned GHD to do a bit of drought resilience work, and we reported on the initial findings, and that led to us maintaining the Water Watchers plan until 2026, which coincides with our reconsenting of two of our three existing takes. I guess the purpose of this was really to bring that piece of work to a conclusion, also to give an update on what our water sources are currently doing, given the year that we had, and also just to provide some recommended further work that we should do. So effectively, that's it in a nutshell. Just two things to reflect on. Clearly, the weather that we've had and last financial year's rainfall, we had that drought period between 2019 and 2022. Then we had last financial year rainfall being double our average annual rainfall. That's held us in great stead in terms of recharging aquifers. And from about November, December last year, we saw the source water stream starting to pick up. So it's been really encouraging, and we hope that the recharge will last as long as possible. But we also, I think what the drought and the extreme weather has shown us is that we need to prepare for any weather events coming forward. We know that NIWA signaled with El Nino coming that it could be quite dry. Ironically, this past August, the August rainfall for the city was probably, again, one of the lower Augusts on record. It might change in September, but it just goes to align with the fact that it is so variable, and we just need to plan for the unexpected rather than what we've done historically. The other really important thing, and we really valued the fact that Commission supported continuing with the Water Watchers plan. In the paper, I've indicated some of the benefits of keeping that. And in particular, we are reconsenting two of our water takes. with the changing environment in terms of water allocation. That's quite an unknown in terms of how much reconsent to take we'll get for those two consents. And therefore, it's really important for us to be seen as a water efficient city. And things like the Water Watchers Plan and all the other initiatives that we've taken really lends itself to that. In addition, as water suppliers, we're called to give effect to Timana Otawai, good practice again for the environment, stream health, and all these type of initiatives are assisting with that. But more importantly for me is if we can develop water efficiency within the city, it just better utilizes all our infrastructure that we have. It makes the resources that we have currently last longer. And it's really just a good thing in terms of keeping resilience within the city. So all that said, the recommendations that we would like some approval with is currently we supplying Waiari water into the lower Papamoa area. It's waiting for 2 additional tranches of pipelines to be installed over the next 10 to 15 years. The next stage is imminent, but we feel we could get some fairly quick turnaround in utilizing more Waiari water in the event that we need it if we do have a drought situation. So that was the one item. We spoke about just preparing a hosepipe ban procedure. Again, it's just a precautionary measure. We understand what we would do in those circumstances, but we'd just like to tease it out a little bit more and formalize it, what that would mean. If you recall, we had sort of lifted the cap in terms of when we would introduce a hosepipe ban. We lifted it from 50,000 cubic meters per day to 55,000 in recognition of the Waiari coming online. We just want to do a little bit more homework and see, is that the right cap to set it at? And what would be a good way of implementing that it doesn't impact negatively on the community. A piece of work that we initiated was some ability to transfer water from our Waiharohi stream across to the Joyce Road treatment plant as an emergency measure. We did some preliminary work on that, but we'd just like to take it to a stage where we said if we ever needed it, we could know what contractors and suppliers that we would utilize. So it's really just fleshing that out a little bit more. Demand management plan is really around we need to do something in that space anyway for our reconsenting process. But we really want to get a good handle on where we sit in terms of our water loss strategy. Although we're reasonably good in the New Zealand water supply context, we feel that there's still efficiencies to be gained in our water loss. And therefore, we just want to make sure that we look at that from a good practice point of view as well. And then the final thing was we've had a look at what Watercare have done in terms of engagement with their community. They set up an advisory panel. It was mainly looking at their source water, their future source water, but we felt that we could come up with a similar type of scenario to get input from the community in terms of what we're doing in the water conservation, water good practice space. So if that's of merit, we would like to investigate that further and bring a report back on that.
I think you're probably one of the few people that would like to see the rain continue.
The
rest of us would like some sunny days.
I have a lot of people, when they see me, they say, it's all your fault that we had a bad summer.
It's quite interesting having a look at, so you've done some work on some of those options to help so shifting that perception onto the value of water. So you talk about it as a more efficient use of our existing sources, but it's also the community thinking about how we use water, that treated water. So it was interesting to see, what you had a look at, and I agree, it looks more sensible with around the shower heads and the toilets. So are you then proposing to our planning team that it goes into our, what is it called? Is it the IBS?
IDC.
IDC, so that all new homes and any upgrades would include those more efficient shower heads and more efficient toilets? Is that what you're thinking of doing?
Normally that detail doesn't sit within the IDC, but I think it's something that we could investigate from a building consenting point of view.
Be good. Would be good. But I want to get accused of politicking over showers.
View of the Building Act underway, so there might be some timeliness around all of this.
You could perhaps put all those options in front of whoever's reviewing our building consent process.
And taking that a step further, Chair, is in terms of, and it was actually the DHG work was a fascinating read. And when you look at the A3 that talks about the emerging risks and the population growth putting the pressure on or stress on the drinking water. So, and we've raised this before, and it has been some time ago, but I'm raising it again. The opportunity, given the significant growth areas that we're looking at, in terms of what are the types of planning frameworks that may be possible to also support what may or may not be possible through that building consenting process, particularly around the potential use of grey water and all of that. So really, if we are just using water and providing for its use in the current frameworks, given that growth, I'm signaling there must be some opportunities in terms of those new growth areas and the planning frameworks that we actually have some provisions or directions in that. I'm not necessarily saying I need an answer now, but I'd really like to staff to come back on those potential opportunities. Otherwise, we'll just end up with growth areas like growth areas we have now. So I think some investigation around that would be warranted. I did have a question, a couple of questions, Peter. You talk about the temporary solution to the water transfer. Why temporary, and why wouldn't potentially that become a permanent arrangement?
We see that being fleshed out when we get our reconsented process done. So once we know exactly what allocation is given to the TOTO for the Joyce Road supply, we would then look at what are the options, and we might then formalise something like that.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And what's a WELS efficient toilet? What are the characteristics about that?
It's from memory, it's the star rating that goes with in terms of litres per flush.
Okay.
Dual flush system.
It has a half and a full, doesn't it? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have some of those.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I just kind of want to support your comments, but also in the report, and also Anne's comments. We do need to think about the way we value the resource, and we like our curbside. The community, we've reduced our curbside by 50%, and I know that this council has also done various types of initiatives, particularly around water, for water metering, and we've got another 15 years out of our current supply before we've had to bring on the waiari. So there are different ways we can manage our supply, but also our demand, and but also just thinking more carefully about how we treat and use water. And I was interested in the comment you made about what Watercare are doing around that panel, and your proposition about maybe setting up something similar here, and thinking about it from a behavioural point of view, because I think that's what we're talking about. How do we change people's views, perceptions, values when it comes to how we use and access water? I mean, we've just built a $200 million water plant, and I can go outside and wash my car with highly treated water, or water my garden with, water that's taken from a $200 million water plant. And I'm not sure our community actually see the difference between that, the rates that they pay for that, as opposed to using water or other things that, we don't necessarily need highly treated water to wash our car and water our gardens. And then also supporting Bill's idea about thinking about other alternatives and other mechanisms in which we can either collect or gather water for those other uses. Yes, we do need good water for drinking. I'm not sure we necessarily need good water to flush the toilet, but for drinking, yes. But looking at all of those different types of initiatives and the interventions that you've listed, or the GHDs have listed in the appendix, I think are a good way for us to start moving towards. Yeah, so I just kind of want to make that kind of broad observation. As a community, we do need to start thinking differently about how we use water. And I do like the idea of using some kind of community panel to advocate or push the community around that behavioural side of things, and about how we value the resource. I do have a question though, and that's in regards to Waiari Stage 2. Over the next 10 years, there will be works to for the next stage. I don't have a clear understanding around what the next stage is. So I know we've kind of already got the one underway and connected. What does Stage 2 actually deliver?
Stage 2 is the extension of the pipeline from where it terminates pretty much at the Welcome Bay roundabout on the highway to Tipuki. From there, to bring that through to effectively Mangatawa. That's sort of our interface between that's sort of the 2/3 of the coastal strip.
So at the moment, the scheme goes from the Waiari along the Old State Highway through to Welcome Bay, and then connects along the Welcome Bay Road to.
So currently Waiari feeds into two reservoirs, Poplar Lane and our Eastern Reservoir, and they in turn feed into the lower Papamoa area. The main road is probably the divider.
That funded already in the long-term plan?
That was on the long-term plan. Those two stages, obviously they were staged at very different times.
It's just the recommendation is to approve any viable options, but there's no dollars around that. So the question is, the works you've described, are they already currently in the 21-31 long-term plan?
Stage 2 is.
Stage 2. Okay, that's fine.
So effectively, what is being requested is there's ability to extend a portion of from Welcome Bay effectively, and linking it into some of the existing pipe work, just in the short term. That'll be needed anyway as part of Waiari Stage 2.
Okay, all right, I understand. Yeah, Stephen.
Thanks, Peter. A couple of questions. I do support the recommendations, but one of the interventions that was possible was subsidising water storage. And I'm not suggesting that we should, but to what extent could we educate users of water about the benefits of them supplying their own water storage on site? I've built in the South Island, concerned about drought, keen to have a garden that survives. So put in a couple of 1,000 litres of water storage on site, just collecting rain roof. With a small pump, I can put it where I need to around the section. If that were done, frequently by many people, then obviously that takes off the pressure and reduces the water hose restriction controversy. So that's kind of question number one. Question number two is around wastewater. We don't charge for wastewater in Tauranga. I come from Auckland, where wastewater is 2/3 of the water bill I'd pay up there. And I understand it's a kind of legislative difference between Tauranga and Auckland context, because Water Care is an independent entity. But what change is required to enable that to happen on a wider basis across the country? Is it just a change of legislation? Is that incorporated in the water reform?
Perhaps if I can try and there's a bit to unpick there. Firstly, the use of tanks on site for water storage, capturing rainwater. I understand that there's an initiative being driven by our sustainability team. I'm not sure whether you're joined to this, Peter, but perhaps if we answer that one first.
So just on that one, we are working with the sustainability team in that space. We have already run, I think, 8 rainwater tank workshops, where it's been attended by about 30 to 40 people at each session, well attended, outlining the process, the do's and the don'ts, the consenting requirements, what you can and can't do, and the leeway that's been given in terms of that space. And that I think has been quite successful in terms of an education process. So, we do have a student that's doing some work in terms of looking at opportunities within parks and reserves to better utilise rainwater tanks as well.
So, and I think is that in partnership with Mitre 10 or Bunnings, one of the two or both?
Correct, with both. There was a discussion about options of subsidy as well, but that's still being worked on.
Right, then
Sounds like a good news story.
And then there's if you might call the more, if you like, the bylaw or the legislation or the planning framework. And I'm not sure from a planning, if there's going to be a plan change that requires this, that's a formal process that we need to go through. I don't know that we've fully explored that for perhaps new greenfield sites. I think the clear message is that you want us to consider that for new greenfield development and the planning framework that accompanies it.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's not already provided in the water reforms, obviously that's another course, but the real big costs in water are as much in wastewater as they are in potable water.
I agree. I've just got a message. There's the rain gauge shows 55 mils already this morning in the east, so it just shows you the opportunity that arises.
So, on the plan changes, I think we've done a little bit of work on this previously, but there's a report coming to you before Christmas, so before the end of this calendar year, with the plan change, all the projects for plan changes, for you to give us direction as to what you see as the priorities. So I'll just ask the team to add that into the list with a bit of an analysis, and then you can make your calls as to where you want the effort spent.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything in the current Three Waters reform that actually...
No, there's nothing. We did actually raise it quite early on with Minister Mahuta, because it does require a legislative change. I think we should add it to our list for the incoming Minister of Local Government. Because the entities will want to, well, it doesn't matter what shape the entities are, they will want that opportunity. Are you happy to move the recommendations with that, or with all of that?
Yeah.
And seconded by Bill. So when do you think, Peter, when do you think you'd come back to us with this community panel? Because that sounds like quite a good idea, not just from how to implement some of the stuff and the behavioural change, but some ideas about actually, conserving water and things that we should be doing as well.
I think from the water care experience, what they found was they obviously had a selection process that they went through, a randomized selection process, but it was all about getting that group of people up to speed from a technical point of view, that understanding of the challenges that come with, in their case, source water consenting. So for us, it's about really getting an opinion of how people feel about good water use practice, water conservation measures, what works, what doesn't, and bringing that together. I guess if we focused on it, we could probably bring something back in 3 months.
Before Christmas. Yep.
That would probably coincide as well with the freshwater management tool, which it's just about done. It's going through a peer review process now. So this is the tool we've talked to you before about, which establishes the correlation between surface water, groundwater, and the weather events that we see. So that's not far away from being completed, and you'll see the results from that as well. So that'll give us a better knowledge about the aquifers, particularly that feed our streams.
All right. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. The recommendations from staff. We've added another one in there around plan changes. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Executive report. Sorry? Oh, yeah, why don't we have a 5-minute break? Meeting on the executive report, sustainability and waste. Who's that? Nick?
Yeah, so the first section of the report is the infrastructure one,
Oh, yeah, sorry,
infrastructure group. This time we have left a lot of room for other groups to report, so it's pretty short and sharp. This is a busy time of the year, getting all the contracts ready for the season. So yeah, we didn't spend a lot of time writing. Happy to take it as read and answer any questions.
Nick, just on the three waters and the water reform, having been advised that 1 October 2025 is our interim transition date, how does that affect our LTP where, and Paul's not here, but from a financial point of view, we had it 2 years out. We had 2 years of the waters.
From a statutory point of view, it is still 1 July 2026, and as you said, it's an interim date, so it's not embedded in legislation. So the advice we've had from auditors, we carry on with the 2026. If it gets cemented in some sort of legal mechanism, then we'd have to reconsider that.
And on that date, when we were advised of the proposed, this is a proposed date. When we were advised of it, we were given the opportunity to comment on it and ask for a meeting with the NTU to the national. That's the National Transition Unit, which is a part of the DIA who manages the water reform, and asked them for a meeting to explain why we would actually quite like to go earlier than that, yeah, the reasons for it. So we haven't actually heard back from them yet, but we are expecting to get a meeting with the NTU on the sooner side.
I just know from the mayoral forum that one of the issues that was raised was around some certainty for staff, and having some key dates that were cemented in the absence of the election and not quite knowing who's going to be doing what and how it will affect us. Okay, Shad.
Thanks, Chair. I don't have a question, but just a couple of comments. Local resident down in Bureta, that roundabout, I have to say, is working really well, and particularly the pedestrian crossings through there. Just from my observations, I think traffic's moving through there more easily. Well, it should be. Moving through there more efficiently, I would say, than what was there previous, which was just an intersection. But also the wastewater meeting that I think Wally had with Ngā Pōtiki, conversation I had with the CEO was that it was quite positive, and him getting a better understanding around the long-term future planning for the wastewater scheme. I think it gave him more context about what council was doing and where it was heading, and I think we've got to catch up with him on Wednesday. So hopefully we'll make some positive progress there.
Thank you. I'll pass those comments back to the team.
Is that sludge removal still on track? Because that's quite critical timing-wise.
It is, yes. Yep.
Oh, just, Nick, there's a reference in para 2 about the overflowing bins and what's happening over Labour weekend. Do I take it, though, that for key public holidays that situation will apply, just not for Labour weekend?
Yeah, we generally, we over the last couple of years, we have done it for other weekends as well. We haven't for the Labour specific one, so we're adding this to the rest of the initiatives during the year.
We haven't heard from. It would be quite interesting to talk to Sue Hutchison. She was at the Papamoa meeting, but no, she was at the Mount meeting, but didn't really get an opportunity to talk. It would be quite interesting to catch up with her to see, to get her thoughts, because she was quite a regular when we first came, wanting more more bins because they were overflowing. So maybe that's something we could do just quietly ourselves.
As in commissioners or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, Chair. Just really some comments from me too, Nick. The Transport Department must be very busy doing contracting because it was a very scant report this month, but I am aware that they're doing some really good work around some of the basic metrics, which we saw in an email through recently, and I'm really looking forward to the report being able to include that sort of data so we can see the trends and what's happening and what's not. And that would really apply to all of the infrastructure areas. I like the way Spaces and Places are tying back the report to the key objectives of the council, and I think that's a good approach. And I also wanted to compliment the team on Totara Street repairs and the communications around that for the upcoming few days that we've got coming. Driving down there, I'm seeing a notice board that's telling me that roadworks are coming, so I can plan in advance. And I know modelling has been done to see how best we could manage the traffic flows. We're allowing it open one way to at least ease the burden on units, and we're opening up the bus lanes. So all of those steps hopefully will achieve a much better outcome than last time. And really pleased that the council staff have been so proactive about planning an event like that on such an important piece of our infrastructure. Thank you, Chair.
Anything else on infrastructure? No? Okay, community services? Yes, I like the way they were all linked back to the...
Thank you. And I'd just like to...
Yeah.
Just like to say, just because we put in 6 pages doesn't mean we're busy, not busy too. Thank you, Nick. Thanks for making room. So the report really just highlights the key activities of the community services group, which shows some of the events that we're having and some of the, I guess what was quite interesting was that some of the events are actually training, particularly around the coaches symposium. So that's, you know, a community benefit as opposed to just an in-house, and the Bay Court Team Tech initiative that we've been doing for 4 years. That's a really positive way, and I know it's something that Steve, we did in building, is that you get to a point where there aren't a lot of people out there trained to do what you need them to do, so having some in-house training is a very positive thing. Just noting as well that we're still recovering from the weather events earlier in the year, and there's some roading works underway in McLaren Falls to remediate the slips there. And I didn't have this as a highlight, but just to save the question, yeah, Alistair and I are working on some metrics or some data that we can provide following the first quarter of the events, just to see if we can get an idea of the benefit to the community. So that should be ready for our next community services update. Happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thanks, Chair. Barbara, in terms of McLaren Falls Park, just a reminder, that's wholly funded by TCC. It's not a sub-regional park such as Tegton, Huharua.
Not in our district.
For another discussion. Yeah, well, neither are the other two, but there are funding arrangements, but that's for another day, those discussions. I was just going to note where you talk about the Keem Reserve and then the reuse of playground equipment. Just commend the team on that, because not everything needs to be completely new. So it is about that reuse throughout the city. So just acknowledging the work on that. And I actually went into the website because I just needed to refresh where Keem Reserve was. But then there was this whole list of things, detailed initiatives and projects that the council had undertaken in Welcome Bay. And yeah, there was a large number. So it was just having actually that information in those types of places is actually very helpful, where you can refer people to when they say, oh, we're the forgotten suburb, for example. It really just showed what had happened over the course of the last year or 18 months.
In fairness, they haven't said that to us for a while.
No,
Because they haven't been forgotten.
no,
as the
because
list
there was
shows.
that list, yes. And I think that was the only commentary I had. No, thank you.
Chad.
Thanks, Barbara. Just firstly, I've just got a couple of comments and then I've got a question. Just want to acknowledge Greg and Dean when we hosted the Deputy PM about a month ago over at the offsite facility, and then also down at the incubator celebrating 10 years. We didn't talk about money, but well, she avoided talking about money.
Good politician.
But I do understand we've got a couple of applications in with culture and heritage, so it'd be great to see what drops out over there. Also want to acknowledge the work that's been done on Shaw Place down in Matua. I'm a frequent walker or biker down that way, so to see those upgrades, I know the water table is probably quite high there, and also coming off the hill, so to see those remedied, I think is really good, and I think we're getting a few emails from some of the locals down there as well. So to see that completed and done, I think is great, particularly leading into summer. In terms of my questions, so looking at what we're doing with young people, the youth feasibility work. There's a study, a youth feasibility study that's going on. I had a quick look at the report, and they're talking about facilities or a youth facility somewhere in the city, and I think they had looked at potentially at Arataki. But I suppose my question is, we've got one refurb, well, one renewal and one new community facility going in at Cape Para and at Maryvale.
Mhm.
Are we thinking about use of those facilities from a youth perspective as well? So both Arataki and those two, I can't think of any others across the city, but there may be, thinking about that community centres AIP, and whether we're engaging or connecting across, particularly from a youth perspective.
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. That would make sense, and I will go back and just get a little bit more detail and provide that to you.
Sorry, but I'm just sitting here thinking, I remember as a 12-year-old doing a sponsored walk to raise money for a youth facility called A Pub With No Beer. And I've been in local and central government now for over 37 years. And I think every year when you ask young people what they want, they say they want a youth centre, and they never work. So I think we should be looking at how our current facilities actually provide good services to young people. And just as we talk to them about skate parks and half courts, and we should be talking to them about what they need out of our community centres, because that's a better way to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be useful to understand the study. I just had a quick flick through it, but how it integrates in with the AIP, with the community centres AIP.
Yeah. Yeah. Bill.
Customer service teams now working full time with libraries and feedback and the number of customers. If great initiative. So if those customers hadn't utilised Tauranga or urban libraries, would they have had to go to the Mount or
That's right.
Yeah.
Around all of that, in terms of being able to do some of that locally.
And that would suit. Yeah.
And that on that over time.
Certainly, and that'll fit, and we've got some more initiatives around kiosks that we'll get into out and into the community. So that'll certainly feed into what sort of resources we need in the city and in the coming years.
Located.
Really good to see that local hazard, the coordination committee set up in the port. When I was at the mayoral forum, when the regional council presented the various hazards, I raised it, and the team didn't seem to be aware of that. So I'm sure.
We have worked with some people from the regional council, so whether it's spread out, I'm not sure, but it certainly is. It's certainly been a huge step forward where we were 12 months ago, where fans and each individual business knew their risk, but bringing it together to look at it holistically, to our knowledge anyway, there was nothing there. So this is a huge step forward, but it will continue we'll be continuing evolving the relationship that we have with these parties.
Really important. Okay. That's a very busy area. And again, the events team have done a huge amount of work, both with the FIFA Women's World Cup, and that was very successful. And of course, then with AIMS and the contribution that they put into that is phenomenal. Chief Financial Officer.
Fairly brief, just really an update around the airport. The development out there is going well. And then just a brief update on the project plan for the asset divestment, which has pretty much been completed now and starting to be worked on in terms of that rollout.
I managed to get a park at the airport. Mind you, I had to go on the very early flight on Friday, but yeah, it's all go out there. Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering if we have any data on the extent of capacity utilisation on the flights into Tauranga. As a regular and frequent user, I observed that the flights, certainly from Christchurch to Tauranga, return are chocker. Just about there's very seldom a spare seat, and prices are getting higher and higher and higher, which indicates we might be on the cusp of needing more capacity. Now, I don't know if that's universal across other origins and destinations, but it would be interesting to have some insight as to whether or not we have adequate capacity supply into the city.
I'll get Ray to contact Air New Zealand just in terms of, I know we are pretty much back at pre-COVID levels in terms of the number of passengers and so forth coming through, but he may have some more information in terms of their capacity plan for the city. So I'll bring that back.
As you say, Chair, the car park is pretty chocker, and I struggle to find a car park in the long term right down the end these days. So it's good to see the upgrades are progressing.
Yep. Anything else on that? Strategy, growth and governance?
So just two issues, one around some legislative change and one around bylaws issues associated with the boundary adjustment process. So happy to take any questions.
It'll be interesting to see whether that legislation survives a general election. I have to say, though, I find it amazing that there is a difference between voting for local government and central government with the mandate that's required by Parliament. It is critically important. Local government is as critically important to get good representation and have a good voting electoral system as much as central government. I find it amazing that central government politicians see it as something being lesser, and therefore it doesn't matter, which I think was the comment, doesn't really matter. which probably indicates why the relationship between local government and central government is one of mistrust and misunderstanding and often misrepresentation. Anything else on strategy and growth? Shared.
Sorry, Christine, I've just got a quick question. So in those boundary adjustments that we had between TCC and Western Bay, so this order in council, it didn't pick up. What didn't it pick up? Is that the zoning between ourselves and Western Bay, or is it something else?
So what happened was when the boundary adjustment was done, what they said is that we needed to go and review all of our bylaws. So the existing bylaws of Western Bay applied, and we had to review all of our bylaws for that bit of Western Bay, which became part of TCC. Originally, when we were working on the boundary adjustment, it was just that our existing bylaws would increase the geographic distribution to cover the new area, which made sense. And we said it's silly to have to review all bylaws for a small geographic area that's coming into the city. So please, it was a administrative issue within the way it was worded. And so we've been lobbying for a couple of years to say, please fix it, because it's not good use of our resource to do that. And now they have agreed and changed it. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Corporate services? Alistair?
Just a handful of points. Under people, performance and culture, at point 70, we're about to roll out the drug and alcohol policy. This will require a randomly selected member of the executive to undertake being drug or alcohol tested in real time in front of the staff to show how easy it is. I'm sure the results will be fine. Also at 73, the summer intern program. This is where we work with the local university to find graduates who are year 2 onwards to spend the summer working on those projects that staff can't get to. Looking at 15 at the moment. So there's been a lot of business interest internally to just spend a little bit to get the connections going, and also potentially develop a pathway for local students. On the technology aspect, we're beginning to look at the intersections with Te Manawataki and 90 Devonport at 81 and how technology can bring people into the city, perhaps including those with students with phones, and how we make it attractive. And then finally, under community relations, just some interesting statistics there at 90. So we have over 23,000 followers on Facebook, and just under 15,000 will have a look at our messages on an average daily basis. Plus, we've had some good wins recently with accessible streets and wishing Harry McCleary a happy birthday. Oh, sorry, one other thing. In terms of buying local, we ran a survey with local businesses to ask them if they'd like to know. Would they like to come and sit with our procurement team just to find out how to do business? We had 100 local businesses say they'd like to, and 40 of them have followed through. So in mid-October, myself and some of the team are just going to go out and help those local businesses work out how they can engage and do business with council.
Questions? Yeah, Stephen.
Thanks, Alistair. Just on the Let's Talk the 7,000 subscribers to the newsletter that we now have email contacts with. And we've spoken on a number of occasions about kind of using that as a means to better poll our community sentiment on issues and submissions. Do we have any feel for what the demographics of that 7,000 and how representative it might be of the community, or can we do exercises post-survey to adjust the data to be representative of issues?
That's a good idea. So we have 56,000 organisations, businesses and residents who are ratepayers. Funnily enough, just over 15% don't even live in Tauranga, and then most of them may not even live in New Zealand. And therefore their needs could be different to if I live in the Mount. we could do a gap analysis between those 7,000 and the 56. I think the opportunity going into the long-term plan is the way that we can communicate with these all of the email addresses is an opportune one, and potentially tailor the question to someone who lives in Papamoa to be different to someone who lives in Welcome Bay. We can do that, and I think as a result, we'll give people the option to join the 7,000. So on an ongoing basis, we can localize messages. So we'll come back to you on the 7,000.
Thank you. It just seems like many of the issues that we are grappling with are complex issues, and they need more explanation than sometimes just the one question in the LTP might be able to test the community on. And so if we've got a ready audience here, I think there's a real opportunity to use it to best advantage. So thank you for that. I think it's an opportunity to potentially be realised.
Thanks, Chair. Question and a comment. Alistair, in terms of the unplanned turnover, and it's noted there is 13.6, and it's been sort of heading in that sort of quiet downward trend, how would we compare with some of our fellow metros in terms of that?
We're at the top quartile in terms of performance. So if you look at other major cities in New Zealand, you'd look at 20 to 25% turnover. So 1 in 4 to 1 in 5. It's healthy, I think, for a 1 in 10 ratio to have an organisation with some turnover. The key is really knowing who the critical staff are and looking at the turnover within that. But overall, we're tracking at the right part of the quartile for New Zealand.
Just a comment, and certainly in terms of under digital services, the commentary in Para 83, in terms of those conversations around infrastructure to enable those things in the future. Really delighted to see that forward thinking, but that integrated approach in terms of that suite of potential initiatives.
Alistair, I'm assuming that in where we're looking at the Te Manawa Take o Te Papa and technology, that we are learning some important lessons from here.
Sure. Could you elaborate on which lessons in particular we're learning?
Oh, just I mean, you know, someone comes to present and we have to have the page turned here, and you know, just the way that this works, having a camera up there. I know that talking to one of our suppliers who's just gone into Awanui-Arangi, the Wānanga, you know, light years ahead of the technology here. But this has been a good experience to know what we need to improve on.
Thank you for, yes, with respect to chambers, if you look at 82, we've appointed a supplier for audiovisual design supply. That firm has New Zealand experience in working out what good looks like. So we should see an improvement.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else on that? No? Regulatory and compliance. Aha, Steve, you're here.
Slightly worried by the aha. Look, I mean, there's nothing too exciting and fluffy in here, but we have volumes there. Our consent volumes across both building and resource consents, and then across our food license, right? Sort of products, they're all down reasonably stable at that sort of lower mark than what we've seen in the previous years, but certainly not dropping anymore, which is good. Interestingly, the volumes of complaints seems to be rising, which does tend to happen in a I'm not going to say recession, but in a more tired market perhaps, and certainly during the winter. And then I guess just wanting to draw attention to the last part of our report where we're talking about the other things we're doing around key accounts, and our events and communications, and we're putting a lot of time and effort in there to not just be the people who issue tickets or decline or approve consents, but we're actually trying to get out and engage with the industry and provide a product that sort of meets their needs. Otherwise, I'll take any questions.
So the thing for me, and I know Bill's going to raise it, is really concerned that our consent's stalling at 68% timely, and we've been there for a long time. Do you think we really need to get someone from outside to have a look at it?
And so we have done that. So we've engaged a consultant earlier this year to look into it, because we're all concerned about it. We don't get into this role just to sit on our hands, I guess. I think one of the slightly aha moments for us was the idea of the broken chain, and so we've always assumed that the number of processes was the limiting factor, and the consultant sort of said really clearly that actually, if a structural engineer goes on leave and you've only got one structural engineer, it seems really obvious that that's going to be the link in the chain that's now broken. And so just having someone external sort of make it really obvious, that's been useful for us, and it's allowed us to focus both on our processing teams, but actually all those other links in the chain, which applies really strongly to my team and to Alex's environmental planning team. So just making sure we've got that depth in those other teams as well. Both Alex and I are really hopeful that the backlog's gone, and so we're hoping that number is going to keep tracking up again, and that we're not going to have anything that creates a new backlog, because that's the tough one, is we're kind of always on our back foot when a backlog starts being created.
And so I see in here you talk about so resourcing's been one of the biggest hurdles. I think we're all aware that with the development of the RMA legislation, MFE swooped up a lot of our planning staff from around the country. Now that looks to be changing. Are we looking to up our numbers of resourcing?
We're always recruiting. What's really exciting is that we are seeing really experienced folk coming to join regulatory for arguably the first time in a number of years, and so we're able to hire people who know what they're doing coming in the door, whereas we don't have to do that 12-18 month trainee program that we've done in the past. So in the building world, I just hired a fully competent RIS3 processor the other week, which has never happened. Certainly not in the time I've been here. So there's little moments like that you go, yes, we're winning this battle ever so slowly.
Bill.
Good segue, and thanks, Steve, in terms of looking at some of those initiatives, because essentially, as Anne has outlined, it's stalled or plateaued, and what's necessary to achieve that cut through. And the reason I'm really keen in terms of achieving that cut through and seeing that graph go like that and then upwards is that in this room a few weeks ago we approved in terms of fees and charges. So it's really making sure that the 1st of July next year that our delivery of service is right up there, because that actually takes away, I can see a whole raft of people complaining, increased fees, but we're not getting through the system. So from my point of view, it's using between now and July next year in terms of that service level or service provision really being par excellence in terms of those time frames. So that's sort of my expectation given around that performance, and also in terms of that seamless, and you've covered off on it, there will always be people away or whatever. It's making sure that we're not, and I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, I've been there, done that, but in terms of having that resourcing that actually caters for when people are away, or those when we get a lot more applications than when we're envisaged. You know, it's challenging, but making sure we're not just resourcing for that bare minimum, given we have clear income to actually cater for paying for that resourcing. So that's just my 2 parts with.
And I really appreciate that, because one of the things that that has been really useful as an operational manager is we haven't slashed the budget while seeing volumes drop. And so that's allowing us to get on with that recruitment and hire people now, knowing that as soon as those consents come in the door and as soon as we're able to get people in the door, we're able to do our job. But yeah, noted.
Not on building, but under you taking comments all in this section, because it was around alcohol licensing. A lot of stuff seems to go to the district licensing committee or for consideration. Are there delegations that staff can sign off on as part of the relevant legislation?
The DLC make all the decisions, but the decisions are either hearing or not. So most of them are made on papers by one of the DLC members. That's required by the legislation. Hearings aren't all that frequent in the scheme of things. I'm trying to find the number off here, but it's not a massive volume. Certainly the majority are done on the papers.
I'm going back in history here, but I think when the regime first came in, and this is a long, long time ago, there was a whole lot of delegations from memory to staff. It just seems we have these systems in place that are process heavy. So
called political compromise. So down in Wellington, when you have people who are trying to get a piece of legislation through, to get the votes, you compromise, and so they tend to push that down somewhere else, mainly to local government, and then because they don't trust local government, you have to have at an arm's length. I've sat around the table with some of those discussions, drive you nuts.
Yeah, and it is bizarre because then again, they set the fees that don't cover for the income.
Right.
So it's just one of those matters that in terms of our briefing of incoming minister, I think this alcohol area does need some, aside from how it operates its process, but in terms of what local government does. So
it's from a process point of view.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, Wellington setting the costs, setting the income, but also not matching that with the process.
Then local government needing to tip in rates money for the operation. Right. So that's just one area, Chair, we need to look at.
If we focus it just on the processes.
Yes,
rather than, because it's a conscience vote. Yeah. You can see I've got scars from it. Stephen.
One final one. There were 2,367 infringements in terms of bus lanes use. Where does that revenue go? Does that go to central government or does a portion come to local government?
To my knowledge, that comes to us.
Is it?
There's a portion of parking revenue that's paid to government, but I'm not 100% sure on the bus. Double check. Yeah, we'll come back and check.
Stephen.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm looking at paragraph 100, which has the CCCs, which, as you know, I've been pushing to have reported. And it is helpful to have them, though it would be good to have graphic representation of the number of new dwellings. It's reported in the text. And it's interesting that 160 CCCs have been issued in July, 165 in August, and of those 47 were for new dwellings in July and 43 in August. We should be CCCing around about 1,000. And so we look to be about 40 to 50% of that number at the moment. And as we can see, the trend is certainly much lower this year than it has been in previous years. But even in previous years, we weren't anywhere near the 1,000 that we need. The 1,000 houses over a year. So I'd say 100 a month we should be completing. We're about half that. So it would be good to have that data. We obviously have it, but if we can present it in that format, it provides us at least a bi-monthly representation as the management reports come through of how we're progressing. And there will be a direct relationship to consents as well. So for every 100 consents, maybe they turn into 50 houses. So that would give us both an understanding of how we're going, but also what the future CCC pipeline might look like, depending on what's happening with consents, if you understand my drift. So yeah, if that can be done, that would be, I think, very helpful for us to understand how we're tracking.
It certainly can be done. It is a manual process at this stage, which is why it's never happened before. But hopefully this report you see as an iterative improvement based on your feedback each time. And so this time we managed to work out how we can do that. And we've already said we'll do it going forward. To go back and to find the previous history of CCCs is just an awful lot of time. I guess one of the things that has changed in the last 12, 18 months is the number of new houses has dried up. So that's probably the biggest part of the market that has changed for us in building consent. So there's still plenty of commercial buildings happening. There's still quite a lot of additions and alterations and fireplaces and that sort of stuff. So it's almost like the, new house market's gone down by 80 or 90%, and that's the proportion of our volume that you can see going down by 30% overall, if that makes sense.
And it is a worry, and that's why I'm sort of keen to monitor the data. Is there any way that we can automate the process?
Now that we know how to find it, we're trying. So leave it with us.
Because that builds, that trend then builds into the work that needs to happen.
Yeah. Right.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, nothing more on for Steve? Baptism by fire, really, wasn't it? That was what the aha was. City development and partnerships. Anne.
Good morning. Garrison's apologies is at the Te Manawataki o Te Papa Limited Board meeting this morning. So you'll see from the report some great progress has been made in terms of capital projects and also in terms of funding as well. Just wanted to clarify Shad's earlier comment about the Minister's visit. So we've put in an expression of interest to the Ministry of Culture and Heritage. We can't put in a formal application form until next year when we've got resource consent. But otherwise, happy to answer any question or try and answer any questions you may have.
So really good to see the Grassroots Trust, the further grant of 250, so we can get zone 3 and 4 of the project up, because we'd only funded 1 and 2, hadn't we? But that's probably then going to push the date out, isn't it? The delivery date out, the opening date?
No, it won't push it out.
Yeah, Bill.
Oh, just a comment, Chair. Great image in 83 of the northern car park, Dive Crescent. And it's interesting. I've had a number of comments in terms of the entrance into the CBD from the Harbour Bridge. So looking forward to the southern section, which is underway. But certainly what I see, it's actually lifted the quality in terms of urban design of some of those places, which, car park's a car park, but certainly what the effort that has gone into that. So I think the team, whoever's been involved, well done on that. And I think it actually sets a good benchmark for the future.
It certainly shows the benefit of having that design group involved from Automataha Trust. I do hope the story, though, about the running of the kahawai along there and the representation. I meant to just check that Oscar's got that in his wayfinding, but I mean, there's a big story around that piece of land, and the design is all about that. Interestingly enough, the rocks in the rain are black. They dry out, they go white. Shad.
I've just got just a comment, and then also, well, I think it's probably more comment. Bill and I met with some of the retailers up around this part of the city last week, and it was great to have Gareth there, and also the new manager from downtown Tauranga present to talk some of the retailers up here. Common theme, car parking. I know that we've responded to some of their requests about the loading and unloading, particularly for our 90 Devonport Road, to free up space when we're not using it. And coming into the building this morning, a lot of the works out here, the footpath is now back, which is great. I kind of wonder whether, if we're not using some of this space, particularly out on Elizabeth Street, whether that could be made available. We talked to the guy from the place next door, Marty's from next door. His concern, I mean, he understood everything that we're trying to do and the connection down Tunks Reserve. He was actually really helpful. One of his concerns is that, you know, we close it for 3 months and it's going to take him 12 months to get back to where he was, because people have now moved on and now frequenting other facilities around the city. And so for him, it was the quicker we could get it back, the better. And I'm just thinking, if there is space out there that we could utilise for parking, and there's a way to do it, whether we could consider that.
Anything else? Do want to acknowledge the work that Paul's doing on the ground in the CBD, the amount of comments that we've had back, and I guess what Shad is saying just highlights when we've got a lot of disruption happening, the benefit of having feet on the ground, faces in the doorways, is you know, worth every cent that we spend that it costs, because it's just that constant contact and having, you know, I know Paul does more than that and his liaison with the police and his wide knowledge, but, you know, it just reinforces those people are feeling important, that we understand the disruption, you know, and what that's causing them. Just because they're on the ground, they're able to talk to someone about their fears and what they're seeing on a daily basis. And I think those people you met raised that fear of just over the road, that little laneway by the farmers' building there, and the feeling of unsafeness that people have because it's dark and it's unused. And so the work that Paul in particular has been doing, and we're talking about city ambassadors, I think what we need is to also think about just the benefit of, whenever there's major disruption, having someone whose sole responsibility is to be talking to the locals, whether they're residents or businesses.
Part of that chair's now connecting in, given that downtown Tauranga have their own resources,
Yeah.
connecting in there. So we're well joined up.
Okay, nothing else? What's the finish time for Tunks Reserve? Is it on? Did I see it? Christmas? Oh yes, December. Okay, nothing more. So we need a resolution to receive the report. Bill and Shad, thank you. Any further comments? All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. No late items. Can I have a mover and seconder to go into public excluded? Shad and Stephen. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Thank you very much.